So hi, here's Florian with a new podcast guest, and I would say introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Daniel. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Laserfocus. We are building the fastest way to email, call, schedule for salespeople on top of the CRM. And my background is I've been in the startup scene since 10 plus years, scaling up companies. I was the delivery hero, Lemoncat, Lemon One, and was recently at the Y Combinator Winter 2020 batch.
So probably you accomplished with that the dream of the most startup people, joining the Y Combinator. But probably for the start, for the people which are not so familiar with the startup ecosystem, what is the Y Combinator?
So Y Combinator is an accelerator program. They invite companies that they like to fund for the course of 3 months to be in Silicon Valley and grow the business there, find out the product market fit, and connect with other like-minded people. So that is the official version. For startup nerds like me, it would be the equivalent of going to Hogwarts. So they would be the Hogwarts of all startup people, because out of their program there came a lot of very famous or big companies, for example, Stripe, Airbnb, DoorDash, Rappi, companies that value billions and are influencing everyday's life. So being part of that network is something that is very valuable.
Yeah, and they have a strong selection, so they select pretty hard who gets in, who not. And so that's probably the beginning of the story. So how was the application process? What was your experience with that?
I mean, to be honest, everyone says the selection process is really hard, but it is more like it's just hard if you take the average of everyone applying, right? So for some people it might be easier, for some people it's almost impossible. So they have certain criteria. If you fit the criteria, then it's not that hard to get in. So selection criteria for them is, do you have someone who can build, or are you building something? Do you have traction with your product? Did you think it through? Do you have industry experience? Did you show that you achieve something significant? If you have these things checked, then the possibility to get in there is, of course, definitely higher than if you just say, I have an idea and I want to make $1 billion. So that is not really true that it's very hard. So there are criteria that you need to meet. But even though if you have the criteria, the process is really standardized, so everyone can apply. I think the program was also brought into life because they wanted to make the playing field even, so no one needs to know investors and to get funded. But they say, okay, convince us in a standardized process, go through our questionnaire on our website, say what you're doing in a very concise way, tell us how it can be big, tell us a little bit about yourself, upload the video, show that you build something, show that you understood your customers. So that is the process in the first part. This is in a written application. So normally they look over it and then they decide for the second part. The second part is, will you be invited to an interview? It used to be that you have to fly to Silicon Valley to Mountain View to their office and have a 10-minute interview. We had the chance as an European company to be from Europe, and they interviewed us in Paris. But now with the new Corona situation, they moved everything also online. So that is the process. And afterwards, they will tell you if you are accepted or not. I think the decision is normally made at the same day. for foreign countries which are not in the US, it takes a little bit longer.
Cool. So they really want to meet you in person before they decide. So it's not like that they do everything online. They want that you meet them in person for the final interview, and that's pretty cool.
It used to be like this. Now with COVID, of course, they're doing everything.
They put it back. And also they have a limited amount of batches, like a limited amount of startups they take per year, right?
I don't think the limitation is there by they don't have an arbitrary number. I think it depends on how many people do they think can they support in a year. So that is also a thing. It increases over time. I think our batch was 200 companies, but 200 companies, that also meant that they had much more partners. So you have always talks with the partners. So if they have more partners and partners increase, then of course the batch can also get bigger. And in the beginning it was very small because there were not that many partners. So that is I think their main criteria of why they're limiting the number of companies.
Wow! So you had like 200 startups with you in this batch. So they flew out 200 startups to San Francisco, and like, did you all stay in the same area, or how did they manage the whole thing then over there?
No, well, they treat us all as adults, so we get the funding, so they wire us the money. Their standard deal is $150,000 US dollars for 7% of the company in a convertible note agreement, which they call SAFE. And with that money, you decide how you will accommodate yourself, if you will bring your whole team there, if only the founder are there. So it's up to you. So everyone finds their way there.
So what did you guys do?
So the program itself is
No. How did you decide? Like, did you all fly over, or just you? How did?
Me and my co-founder Mark, and CTO, and me. We flew over. We booked an apartment, stayed in San Francisco instead of Mountain View, and yeah.
Okay, cool. And you stayed, of course, with Airbnb.
No, we didn't use Airbnb.
Okay.
We used another YC company, which was Zeus, that was more comfortable.
Okay, cool. And so I'm surprised that they have 200, a batch of 200 startups. Would you still say the quality of leading you guys and teaching you guys and help you guys was still there?
It's hard to say because I can't compare with the batches beforehand.
Fair point. So just the experience, like, what was it really?
I think so. What I heard from previous batches, it's always the same, right? So we meet up once a week for having talks and so on, and then we have office hours with 4 partners, and then with other companies talking about what we want to achieve. And in the meantime, when we want to have individual office hours, we can also book that. So program-wise, it's very good. It's still a lot. You stay in touch with the people very much. But the most of the time, the most important thing is not like you go to school and they sit in front and tell you what you have to do. They just challenge you, and then you go out and then you work to grow the company. And that's what we also did. I mean, I basically just saw our apartment the whole time, except for the times when we met the other YC founders once a week or every 2 weeks.
Yeah, so you stayed most time there, and or you worked most of the time, of course, and then just got feedback the whole time.
Yeah. Being locked down didn't affect us that much. So it was the same for us the whole 3 months that we stayed inside and worked.
Yeah, but you still saw a bit of the Bay Area, right? Or did you really all the time stayed focused in there and locked down, just as a preparation of COVID-19?
To be honest, what I saw was traffic jams from going from San Francisco to Mountain View. You don't believe the distances are very long, so it takes a while, especially in the rush hours. And I saw a little bit of California because you have to keep your mental status clear, healthy. So you have to do something out of work once in a while. So we also saw a little bit.
Cool. Yeah. That's always good. Like it's never a good idea to travel and don't go outside and check out what's around you. And definitely one of the most important things you can do with your life, travel. So would you say it was still a unique experience you couldn't have somewhere else, or would you say it's not so much different to an accelerator you could have in Germany, in Berlin somewhere?
No, I would definitely still abide by my opinion that doing YC is sounds a little bit cheesy, but it is life changing. So I told Mark, if we apply there, then this will be one of the parts in life where you say, okay, if I participate there, then my life would be a little bit different if I don't participate there. Normally, you don't have clear direction of path there. And it was true in the end. So being exposed there and making connections with the people and making friends, especially, and having the feeling that the YC network is something that you can rely on is definitely changing. It changed our life. Definitely.
So how it changed what impressed you the most in this?
What impressed us the most was more on a psychological level also. So like I said in the beginning, I'm in startups 10 plus years already, right? So you also think, okay, you know shit, but going there, you also get humbled, and then you try to get out of the mental models, or you have certain mental models where you approach things. For example, me as a Berlin startup guy, it's very much about execution. But then you go there, and then they keep on telling you that the most important thing is to build something that people want. So it's much more product focused. So that changed a lot for us because we thought, okay, it's just an execution game maybe. And it ingrains into the modus of work, how you do it. So you try to talk with users more. You try to talk with customers all the time just to validate your idea out there before just selling.
Yeah, but also execution is always important to really validate your ideas at the end, because
Definitely.
like words are cheap, action is possible. So even if the user says, yeah, that's pretty cool and I would really like that, if you put it in front of him and you see what he does with it, that's the real indication. Before that, cheap talk could be cheap. So I know where this is coming from. Stay as close to your end goal as you want. So you want to have a good experience for your customer. Your customer needs to have value. So it's always good to focus on the value. But on the other side, if you just stream and talk too much about your product and and be a good pitcher, like fuck that, just at the end, just produce something and let the product speak for yourself and not the pitch.
Definitely. So maybe it's a misunderstanding. So the execution part means talking to the customer, finding out what they want, building it in 1 week, and then going back to them, then finding out if this was the thing, and then building it again. So the execution is definitely there. I'm just saying execution on the part where you say, okay, this is the best, this is the product, we sell it, we have high growth numbers, but no retention because they don't like it. That is the thing that I was pointing out with saying, okay, not only execution matters, but having a product where the people really want to use it is the precondition for it.
Did you learn there's something which you didn't know before? Like especially if you said you saw a lot and you had a lot of experience in the startup world. Did they surprise you with something, with a technique or something? You walked out after that and said, okay, that's pretty cool. I never heard of that.
In theory, you hear a lot of things. So you're watching, you're listening to podcasts, you're reading books, how to do this, and then the YouTube videos and everything. It's always a difference if you have skin in the game and you have to put these things towards your business. And there might be a little bit too much advice out there. So honestly, we heard everything before, but before we understand it, or before you finally realize how it impacts you, you need to go through a little bit of suffering, I would say. So no, they didn't say something new. Everything they said can be watched in their videos, but by repeating it and then pinpointing it out to you, then you don't get so blind to obvious mistakes anymore. So that is what we learned there.
So it was more focused and more impact on what they tell you.
I mean, the thing is, they're very honest, so they never bullshit you, which can be also hard. I mean, you sometimes everyone bullshits themselves and say, yeah, we have something, and then they ask you, and then they try to find the things where you're lying to yourself and so on, which helps you confronting yourself with the problems, which is very good and also devastating, to be honest. It's not like it's always fun. It's always you go there and then they say, okay, what about that? Did you thought about that? And you're saying, yeah, not really. And then you have to go out and validate it again. So that is the helpful thing, the constant, honest feedback.
Yeah, definitely. And it's even more difficult if you need to give, like, if you also agree to the feedback and see it yourself, because being honest to yourself is also sometimes really difficult, because it can be also really painful.
This is the most painful thing, yeah, definitely.
So do you have still contact to the people, to your mentors from there?
Yeah, so we are open to book office hours. So whenever we need to speak about something, about strategy, or just talking about how to go forward, fundraising, whatever, they are always open. So we have WhatsApp channels with them, or I just ping them and they say, yeah, book a time.
Cool. So that's the typical part of the alumni network you're then part of, because alumni, like they are mainly a accelerator in the US. So they're based in the US. They let the people fly out to the US. But would you say there's still a big alumni network in Germany? It's still valuable for you?
I mean, there are not that many German companies that went to YC. I think it's around about maybe 9 or 10. So we are very close to the German founders. They helped us a lot in the application process, because as German companies, you also have to think about, okay, how do I set up a deliver corporation? How do I do lawyers, patents, and so on? So that network is very helpful. For example, one tool is here, and then you have Localize, and then you have Player. These are German companies or German founders who've been to YC, and they are people I stay in contact with still.
Oh, so they forced you to have a legal company in the US, so they don't invest in a German GmbH or some German entities, like some German legal entity.
No, so you need a Delaware corporation, and that can be, for example, the mother company of the GmbH.
Oh, yeah, okay. That's probably a reason why not so many German startups being part of the Y Combinator, because like 10 is close to nothing, like really close to nothing for their famousness. It's really low. Interesting, yeah. So
what do you mean with 10? What do you mean with 10?
Like if you say there are only 10 German startups were part of the Y Combinator, that's like really a low number. Like,
yeah, it is, unfortunately. I don't know why. I think more. I think the more people can apply to it. I don't know why they don't do it. Maybe it's just a different mindset, or different criteria, or different styles of companies that are built in Germany.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Or maybe your theory that's really easy to, or like it's not so difficult to get in. maybe that's also wrong. I don't know. So how did you go about the whole legalization of the US part of your company? Like, probably you only need to do this if they applied, like if they let you in, like if they say you are in, probably, or did you need to do this before you can applicate?
No.
Maybe before you can apply.
So they wire you the money into a US corporation. So you need to incorporate first. That was pretty straightforward. So if you're a US company, it's very straightforward. You just go on the software and then incorporate.
Yeah.
We also had it kind of easy because we didn't have a GmbH beforehand, so we just incorporated the US company.
Yeah.
But we still used a lawyer that is familiar with German and US incorporation and taxes.
Yeah. And so probably you need to pay some bucks for him, but at the end you get like 7% for 150K. Invest in your company straightforward. So yeah, it's a no-brainer to do that. Like it doesn't sound like a reason you shouldn't participate in the Y Combinator. Yeah, cool. But it makes it more impressive that you guys are now one of the 10 German alumni companies of the Y Combinator.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. It feels I think the borders are changing anyway. I think they're taking in more international founders nowadays because they realized, okay, it's not all just happening in the US. So I think there will be more German founders coming. I also recently talked with someone who applied and got accepted out of Germany, so it might change.
Yeah, would be cool. Like it's probably we can still learn a lot from the Y Combinator and from the Silicon Valley itself. So now you're back, and let's keep COVID-19 out of the game. What do you say were the main difference between the Berlin startup community and the Silicon Valley startup community over there?
I mean, there are different ways of difference. So maybe first is in the behavior. So Silicon Valley is very much paid forward. So people tend to be very helpful. They make intros, and once you talk to them, they say, "Hey, you have to talk to this guy," and then they open the door. So I went to a lot of companies there in San Francisco. Went to the offices, talked with the people, just doing user interviews. It was very, very helpful. I'm not saying that Berlin is not the same, but Silicon Valley is on an extreme in helpfulness. Let's put it like this. And the helpfulness is also not only on the founder level, but also on the employee level. This is the big difference here. I think the Berlin founder scene is very nice to each other. But the people who work in the companies don't have the mindset of, hey, I want to be helpful here. So they are just employees. So they don't say, okay, we're in the spirit of everyone is a startup economy, or everyone is a startup, so I help other startups. I think there's the big difference, because the main driver over there is everyone is a startup, everyone should help themselves, because you never know who you're talking to. That might be the next company you're working with. That might be the next company which you partner up with. So therefore, you keep the opportunities open, right? So this is the big difference there.
Cool. And it doesn't depend on size, right? Like also big companies behave like that.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, you still have access to the Collison brothers from Stripe, or with bigger companies, it's a no-brainer there.
Yeah,
it's of course also my experience. It can be that other people are not that don't have that, and also I think YC opens the doors. So I also hear from people who coming from Germany, going there, and they don't get any connections. You have to. The people let you in, and once you're in, then it's very easy to move around. But maybe there's a barrier of entry beforehand. I don't know that.
Yeah, could be. Like, did you go also to outside events of the Y Combinator? So I'm guessing they organized some parties or some meetups. And then did you also go to random meetups or like meetups which are not organized by Y Combinator?
No, not at all. I didn't. The doesn't help anything to my company, so I didn't do that.
It could be that like they had like a random or like a meetup CRM based or B2B sales based or something.
I
Yeah.
wanted to go to Zasta, but I mean, COVID hit, therefore I couldn't go to Zasta, which was in San Diego, the biggest convention for software as a service companies.
Yeah. So it's right when COVID-19 started, when you guys were finished, right?
In the middle of at the we finished end of April, so in March, middle of March, it started all there. And we wanted to take COVID out of the discussion.
Yeah. Good point. So what are your future plans? So you go on build more on your product. You always want to improve it, of course. But do you also plan to go back to the US and work more with the US, build up your startup in the US, or what are your plans for the future?
I mean that the goal. US is a big market, so it is definitely one of the things that we aim for. I mean, looking at the news or how the situation is nowadays, I can't predict that. But before everything went to hell there, we had we wanted to go back to the US and having the market, the go to market there, while also having a foot in Europe. But I mean, it's still early. But this is one thing that we wanted to have in the future, definitely, since we have the contact there and also the opportunities there.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask the next question. So that it could be that like the go-to-market phase is easier to do in the US if you have the really good contacts than in Germany.
Yeah, definitely.
So how do you know, or how do you define when your product is ready for go-to-market?
I mean, you're asking the hardest question that everyone is asking them. When do we have product market fit? You have so many theories about it. So you have Mark Andreessen saying, you just always know when you don't have product market fit, but when then it hits you and you don't, then everyone is running your doors in, and then you just know it. And then you have something that Raul Fora from Superhuman, he also came up with a metric to see if you have product market fit. That is by asking your customers how disappointed would they be if they can't use your product. And if it's over 40% saying this, then you will say, okay, you have a user product market fit, something like this.
Yeah,
same. The retention is high. The time spent in our product is for us the North Star metric, because then we know, okay, if people spend more time in our tool, that means they forsake their slow CRM Salesforce. They don't use their Gmail anymore. They don't use their calendar, but they do everything out of the tool that combines everything in one front end. That is for us, for example, how we define our product market fit.
And probably you're also able to kind of get like some results. Probably you can also check the main KPIs salespeople use, like how many contracts they got from it and how many appointments they got. Probably you can also track this on the side or get like kind of show them statistics so that you have also this metric going for you.
I mean, the activities of salespeople is definitely a good metric to see. The results of salespeople is something that we can't directly influence, because it always depends on the sales organizations, how structured they are and what their process is. But we can definitely limit the time they spend on unnecessary administrative stuff. So if you spend normally 3 hours, or normally you spend 66% of the time just doing administrative stuff. So that is the thing that we automate very much.
Yeah, makes sense. And then probably, then probably you can build up a matrix, something like goes through your full funnel completely in X times per hour, and then you have a nice metric for them. Cool. So Yeah, I heard also a similar story how you find your product market fit. What this person told me was just turn off your service and check how fast your customers talk to you and ask what's going on, why your service is turned off.
Yeah, makes sense.
So yeah, cool. Yeah, that's definitely something to look forward to see. How this goes in America in comparison to Germany. So if you start in America first, how easy then the transition is then back to Germany, or how easy is it to do the go-to-market strategy in the US? That would be definitely an interesting thing for the next podcast. But until then, I have still 2 questions for you. Question number 1 is, what are your favorite books?
Favorites are for the unadventurous minds, but I think about it like this. So if you would ask my wife which book I quote the most and getting on her nerves the most, I would say it's in. I know it's very mainstream nowadays, and it's absolutely non-contrarian, but I don't want to pretend anything. So it's Harari, Sapiens. I still like the insights out of it. This is one of the favorite books.
What was the title again?
Sapiens from
okay. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so that is something that I keep on referring to. And then what I also like, then that might be also not shining good light on me, but I just say it anyway. So it's Dobelli's the art of thinking, and the second book too. So he points out the mental models and all the biases that we are subjected to. So it is, it's just a recycling of Daniel Kahneman, thinking fast, thinking slow, and everything in the behavioral science. But I think I like the books because they are on my toilet, and I can always look them up again. And it's very entertaining to have 1.5 pages of how I just went for a wrong bias again.
Yeah, it's also a good idea to keep your books on the toilet, so they have some quality read and not like just the backside of the shampoo.
Yeah.
Cool. And my last question is, if you could go back in time to your 18-year-old self, what for advice would you give to yourself?
18-year-old me is a total different person. I wouldn't be friends with. I would find 18-year-old friends, 18-year-old me very fond of himself. So just to put it in context, I wore baggy pants, was doing graffiti, doing hip hop, and thought that the world evolves around being as real as possible. So
okay, cool.
I thought I knew everything. So what would I tell my 18-year-old self? I would tell him question things. I would tell him everything will go fine. Enjoy what you're doing, and don't become a cynic.
Yeah, cool. Would you think like he would listen to you? Like, what would you say like it would get him? Like he would listen to you and he would think about it, or would you think like you just say, okay, come on?
Which 18-year-old boy who's on top of his game ever listens to anyone anyway? So I think he would listen.
Yeah.
But he would still say, okay, yeah, that's not important. It's not important as art, or it's not important as something else. There will be a sentence I would say to myself. Yeah.
Could be. How did the transition happening? Like, how did you leave the hip hop graffiti track?
The French also have a saying: if you If you till when you are 30 and not a socialist, then you don't have a heart, and if you're after 30 and still a socialist, then you have no brain. So I mean, the question, how can I stay hip hop my whole life? If it's not my career, then of course I cannot stay hip hop all my life.
Yeah, okay, cool.
There was not a hard decision to leave that behind me, but I still have it in my heart. Still love the music.
Yeah, you also never know. It could be that you would be famous as a hip hop artist or graffiti artist if you would stay to it. Like it's always hard to say. You never know. Yeah.
So there was a transition, and the transition was when I spent 1 year in Vietnam. There was when I realized that I was very fortunate to have the freedom to bother myself with first world problems like whose mixtape is cooler and how do I make the spray cans make wider lines.
Yeah. Definitely good point. Like traveling then brings some context to the whole thing. Yeah, amazing. Cool. Daniel, it was a pleasure.
Thank you, Florian, for the time.
Thank you very much that you took the time, and I'm looking forward to the next version, to the next podcast with us, how to do go-to-market in America.
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.